Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. As always, it's a pleasure to be back here fellowshipping with you and my various guests that I have here on Points of Light Radio. And I'm quite excited to bring you this particular segment of Points of Light Radio, because there again, it's one of the the organization that we'll be shedding some light on today is one that many people have probably never heard of, irregardless of what lodge they belong to. And this particular organization is called the Masonic Order of Athelstan. Now, like I keep saying, see, did I get you? I guarantee you that there are even Freemasons right now that are going, wait a minute, what? Ooh, okay, I can almost guarantee you, right? But that's what Points of Light Radio is here to do, isn't it? Is really raise the profile and preserve the history, as I've often said, of these different organizations. Now, my guest for this particular segment of Points of Light Radio is a gentleman named Anthony Burke. He's the Deputy Grand Master of the Masonic Order of Athelstan. Mr. Burke is a Freemason and a member of several different appendant bodies of Freemasonry, but the Masonic Order of Athelstan is what he's here today to shed some light on. To give you some insight, the Masonic Order of Athelstan is based on the historic records of the life and legend of King Athelstan. King Athelstan was the first king of the English and grandson of Alfred the Great. He reigned between 925 and 939 AD and was a distinguished and courageous soldier who pushed the boundaries of the kingdom further than anyone had done before. I'm reading right from the Masonic Order of Athelstan website. Now, I will let my guest expand further on King Athelstan. Now, the Masonic Order of Athelstan reflects and recognizes how early references to the importance of Masonry in English history was significant for the development of speculative Freemasonry. The order was founded in 2005 to encourage and prompt members to further study and research Freemasonry. That's fairly young by Masonic standards, and it's probably why many people, even in Freemasonry, may not have heard about the Masonic Order of Athelstan yet. Now, the lodges meet in courts, the equivalent of a lodge. And as I've said before, what I love about the Masonic Order of Athelstan is its desire and commitment to further learning and preservation of the history of Freemasonry, because the preservation of history of different fraternal organizations is part of the goals of Points of Light Radio, if you call, right? And of course, the raising of the profile, which is part of, learning here. Their goals line up with the goals of Points of Light Radio, put it that way. Now, one of the qualifications to belong to the Masonic Order of Athelstan is to be a member of the Holy Royal Arch. My guest will cast further light on that, but I'm sure that he will shed light on that, as well as the Masonic Order of Athelstan. A tremendous amount of light here. There's a lot of learning to do here. So rather than sit here and talk, let's have Mr. Burke shed some light on this very interesting organization. I'm very excited about this. But as I always ask you, are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? We're going to get both here. So just trim your lamp and follow me.
Good evening, Stan.
Mr. Burke, welcome to Points of Light Radio.
How the devil are you?
Oh, very good, thank you. I understand you're a member of the Order of Athelstan, the Masonic Order of Athelstan.
That's correct, yes.
Why don't you tell my listeners and viewers, first of all, a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name's Tony Burke. I was born in Liverpool in England. I suppose most people know Liverpool for the home of the Beatles. And the Beatles were on the go when I was a young man growing up. I'm a member of lots of Masonic orders, the Craft, the Chapter, the Mark, the Masonic Order of Athelstan, and lots of others.
Okay, well, and tell us a little bit about this very little known order, because I only heard about it recently during a web search. Like, formed in 2005, as I understand. It's a fairly young order. It
is, and I can tell you the start of it was in a pub in Newmarket in the east of England. Some like-minded Freemasons were having a drink, and they're all researcher-type Freemasons. They do a lot of digging into the research of what Masonry means to people in the world. And one of them mentioned the ancient charges. And somebody said, well, where do they emanate from? And the ancient charges are a constituent part of modern-day Freemasonry. So as they looked at the research into the origin of the ancient charges, they found that King Athelstan had called a meeting of his ealdormen, his lords and the like of the time, and he called a meeting in 926 in York to have a look at what's happening to the standard of of ordinary operative Masons in the realm at that time. He was concerned that some of the practices were not as good as they maybe should have been. So he set up some ancient charges, not only to govern the way they built their structures, but also how they dealt with each other, how they actually behaved. So he set up these ancient charges, which are 9 for ordinary men and 19 for fellows, 9 for masters and 19 for fellows and crafts and entered apprentices. And he set those ancient charges into being. The Grand Assembly in 926 is what the candidate for the Masonic Order of Athelstan, he becomes a member of that Grand Assembly for his ceremony. And the be all and end all of the ancient charges is when a chap called Elias Ashmole, I don't know whether you've heard of him, Stan. He was one of the founders of the Royal Society in Britain, a very learned man. And he joined Freemasonry in 1646, I think it was, in a place called Warrington in Lancashire. And they used the ancient charges to regularize his initiation. They made him behave according to those tenets of the craft, as we call it now, which is the link between our current speculative Freemasonry and our ancient brethren going back to 926. So we are now an order which links historically, not in allegory, historically the start of ancient Freemasonry into modern day speculative Freemasonry.
Well, you talk about research. Isn't that really, some would say, well, that's what your research libraries are for, shall we say. People can just go there, But is this for people who want to take it to that next level, shall we say?
I would say it's people who need understanding. Knowledge is okay, but knowledge itself is just a tool. It's when you actually understand not only the meaning of what the knowledge is portraying, but also how it affects the user of the knowledge. Freemasonry itself tends to put thought in your mind of stories, allegory, and most different orders have a story to get a moral message across. And the Masonic Order of Athelstan stimulates thought processes and gives you the knowledge, but asks you to go and find out the meaning, the wisdom and understanding of knowledge. And that's part of our ceremony.
Okay, now, you tend to spend a lot of time talking about, on their website at least, on the Holy Royal Arch. So, like, why is that, shall we say?
Well, as a qualification for becoming an Athelstan Freemason, you have to be a subscribing member of a craft lodge and also a Royal Arch chapter.
Now, why that? Why the Holy Royal Arch, though?
The Holy Royal Arch is, some people call it the end of the first 3 degrees, the culmination of the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, of speculative Freemasonry. They say it is the end, it's the answer to where you left off in the 3rd degree.
I've heard.
I don't know whether you know much about the degrees, Stan, but the 1st degree in Freemasonry is an entered apprentice, where it's a young man or young in service Freemason who's learning his trade. Then you take him up to a little bit higher, to a fellowcraft, and give him a bit more knowledge, not only about the allegory, but also about himself. And then at the 3rd degree, you've got the Master Mason, who cannot then be an operative Mason and also one who can supervise others. But at the end of the 3rd degree, there are questions asked. And
I've heard about this.
And those questions are not answered in the 3rd degree. The Holy Royal Arch does give you the answer.
Yeah, it brings a lot of the missing pieces. I have heard the story.
Yeah, that's essentially it. It's the missing pieces. But it also, you go in search of the lost word.
Okay.
And it turns out that lost word is God.
Yeah.
Now, God can be, we call it God, we call it the Supreme Being. Whatever faith you are, you call your own belief in the Supreme Being. You can call it what you like.
But I wanted to ask you about that too. Like, I've read that on some sites that the Holy Royal Arch is probably the more Christian, shall we say, of the Masonic orders. Would you agree with that?
No, necessarily. No.
Okay.
As I've just said, there are, in my view, I am a Christian. In my view, there are lessons learned about finding your particular God or your Supreme Being. Because we are a multi-faith society, we don't necessarily all abide by the Bible. That is my holy book. However, the Quran, the Torah, any person coming into Freemasonry can take their oath to not disclose our secrets on their own holy book. That's why we don't say God. We say the Supreme Being, because it might mean something different to you or I or my friend next door.
So a Muslim, a Hindu, can actually join Holy Royal Arch as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's wondering about. But I understand what drew you to the Royal or Masonic Order of Athelstan, but what drew you into Freemasonry itself?
Well, the story goes. I was at a party in the mid-90s, no, early 90s, and a lot of people there. I enjoyed their company, and one of them was the headmaster of the local grammar school, and he said to me, he says, "Would you ever fancy becoming a Freemason?" And I said, "Well, I haven't thought about it. It's never crossed my mind. I've never wanted to study Freemasonry." So he said, "Well, what do you think Freemasons are all about?" I said, "Well, I really haven't got a clue." So he said, "Well, what about these people here that you're at a party with?" There are about 40 or 50 people in the party. I said, "Well, they're lovely people, and I enjoyed their company." So he said, well, all of them are Freemasons.
Ooh.
I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. And he said, how would you like to mix with the Freemasons like these people all the time? I said, well, I'll think about it. And it took me a couple of months to think about it. And I researched, I went, did a bit of reading, and I researched what Freemasons do. They're not only a charitable organisation, but they're also a developmental organisation. They develop the man from within and the lady from within, because there are women Freemasons as well.
I've interviewed them.
Yeah. And I looked at it and I thought, well, I'm in my early 40s. My children have left the nest. I need some other interest. So I went along to a couple of, they call them white table meetings, where you're invited to a Freemasons lodge, but you can't go into the Freemasons lodge. You go to the meal afterwards, and you go there with your wife and get to know all these people. And I thought, well, this is the sort of company I would like to keep. And also, with my own research, I said, yeah, I think I ought to find out how I can develop myself. Because I wasn't always a nice, good-looking, quiet, shy, unassuming chap.
Okay. Well, I do want to ask you about that too. Do you think that going into it in your early 40s maybe helped you get into it a little better, shall we say, or made you a better Freemason? Or would you say that, it's really for anybody young or old, shall we say?
Well, I wish I'd done it earlier, Stan.
Wow.
I really do. I have proposed Freemasons, quite a lot of them into Freemasonry. And the youngest one I did was an 18-year-old man. And he'd just become 18, so he's a man in our country.
Oh, yeah.
And 21 in your country, I think, but 18 in England. And he was the son of a Mason who died. So he was what we call a Lewis. And I said to him, he wanted to come in, and I said, you'd be more than happy, I'd be more than happy to bring you in as a Lewis. So he came in, and he's now a wonderful guy.
Okay.
He's been in Freemasonry ever since, and he's a circuit judge. He's a cracking bloke, and he applies the morals and the standards of Freemasonry not only to his life, his personal life, but also to his professional life.
Okay, so now I understand that there are 3 and in some cases 4 degrees to the Holy Royal Arch. Do you have a degree system to the Masonic Order of Athelstan?
Well, there are 3 degrees before you go into the Holy Royal Arch, and yeah. I think that's about the end of it for speculative Masons. Mm-hmm. When you go into the various chairs in the Holy Royal Arch, you get a bit more knowledge as you go up the scale. But there's actually only one Holy Royal Arch. The Masonic Order of Athelstan is just essentially it's just one ceremony.
Okay.
And it's you representing an attendee at the Grand Assembly in York in 926, being told about your standards of workmanship and why you should check yourself, make yourself better, and be more useful to society.
Okay, and I understand that for Holy Royal Arch, the degree system, the ceremonies for them are actually very moving ceremonies, as I understand it. Would you agree with that?
Well, I found it very moving, and I can remember obviously I can't talk about the details of the ceremony because I've taken a note not to disclose it. But I can say that there's a certain point within the Holy Royal Arch ceremony when you see the light, and points of light radio, when you see the light, you know you're right.
Mm-hmm. Now, but why don't more Freemasons join the Royal Order of Athelstan or even the Holy Royal Arch, shall we say?
The Masonic Order of Athelstan is unashamedly invitational order.
Oh, okay.
We invite people to join. You can't apply to join. The reason why we do that is because what we don't want to do is cause disharmony. If there's somebody comes in and it's not for them, maybe they don't like doing research, or maybe they don't like the ceremony, and they might cause disharmony. We are a very happy order because we choose who we want in, and we suggest to our brethren in the court, we call them courts, not lodges.
Yeah.
We say to the brethren, something, for example, I was thinking about approaching Stan Miller to join the Masonic Order of Athelstan. Somebody might say, oh yeah, he's a good lad, let's approach him. But somebody else might say, oh no, I've had a run-in with Stan Miller. If he comes in, I don't want to be here. So we don't want to cause disharmony. So what we do, we don't vet, we just make sure that we approach the right people.
So I have heard it said that with Freemasons, that you learn a lot about yourself as you go through the degree systems and the different lodges and appendant bodies. Did you? And give us an example of what you might have learned, shall we say? Yeah,
very much so. As I say, why I said I wish I'd joined earlier is because my knowledge was lacking understanding. I was happy to be just a member of society, but if I'd have been a Freemason a lot earlier, I would have found within myself the strength to offer my services to society a lot wider. My upbringing in Liverpool was not the best. It's not like the Bronx, but it's not that bad. But it's a harsh city to live in, and it's a survival instinct most of the time. But when I joined Freemasonry, I thought, have a look at yourself. Tony, just have a look at yourself. Are you really a good man for society, or are you not? And as I said, when I was in my early 40s, when the kids had left home and gone to university, I was looking for something else to do. And when Freemasonry filled that void and developed me from within, and I think made me a better person. My wife certainly thinks I'm a better person than when I was younger. I was headstrong when I was younger, and I was probably a lot less caring than I maybe should have been. And now I think I'm a lot more caring and a lot more understanding of other people. A lot more tolerant as well.
And you would agree, though, that the Masonic Order of Athelstan has definitely enriched your Masonic experience.
Very much so. Because I'm mixing with people who are researchers and they look to find out the reason why something happens, not necessarily just Freemasonry, but they research into other things. And there are a lot of analytical people in our order who look at it and say, wow, there's a situation there we could improve on. Not only in Masonic circles, but in our social circles as well. And Masonic Order of Athelstan gives you that freedom to go and research and also develop from within. Part of our ceremony mentions that knowledge is the basic. Wisdom and understanding are the ones that come out of it. The Binar and the Hochmar. That's what we say. Hochmar meaning wisdom, Binar meaning understanding. Go and find out about the situation, go and find out about yourself, and get that Hochmar and Binar.
Well, Mr. Burke, I really do appreciate your time today and taking the time to come in here to Points of Light Radio and talk to us. And I wish you all the very best, you and your court there, all the very best, sir.
Thank you very much, Stan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So, how do you feel? Do you feel enlightened? Do you think? Some things on a personal level that I took away from fellowshipping with Mr. Burke are, first of all, it's interesting we now have been introduced to another invitation-only appendant body of Freemasonry, right? If you recall, and I encourage you to, as I always do, if you recall, the Order of the Secret Monitor was also a invitation-only appendant body. And as I was going to say there, if you haven't viewed that segment yet, go back and take a look at it, right? Because you see the same thing here. It's invitation only. So this is one thing I'm finding very, like I keep saying, very interesting about Freemasonry. They don't just like let anybody in. Okay. And then once you're in, they're not just going to let anybody jump into that next body of Freemasonry. There has to be a body of work behind you, a proof that you're ready for that. I like that. And as I've often said, and there again, people will sit there and people from outside these fraternities will criticize, but put it this way. I've served in the military. I've also worked a lot in the private sector as well. And there is something to say for that time in rank, or that time on the job. You do need to build that body of work. Personally speaking, when I was in the military, I could always tell the leadership that had spent time, or how much time they'd spent in their previous ranks, because you would actually see it in the way they led troops and the way they treated their subordinates. So that's something very important here. Before you jump to conclusions on this, you have to look at that. There's such a thing as promoting people too fast and just taking anybody. And I like what they're doing. I do like what they're doing here. And I'm once again taking away the fact that Freemasonry is not something you can get bored in, and there's a lot for people to do, for everybody. I mean, from, as I've often said, the motorcyclist. Now, I want to hear from some of the Masonic riders. Okay, just before I go any further, I've been reaching out to them. I want them to get in touch with me. But there's something for everybody, from the motorcyclist to the bookworm that just wants to sit and study, and some people will join an organization, take their degrees, and even do work within their lodge, but, take everything at face value. But then there are those who really want to delve in and really want to learn. And what is this degree about? And how does, let's check out the history of let's learn about the history and shed some light on the history of the organization. And that seems to be what Mr. Burke is doing here. And wasn't he beautiful? Very passionate, very hungry. It was refreshing. It really was. It was really refreshing to talk to him. And we'll definitely have to have him back here again. Like I've often said, another one of those cases where I really do feel like I've made a friend here, that's just one of the, shall we say, the side benefits of Points of Light Radio for me. I actually feel like I'm making friends here, but I'm afraid I'm jumping the gun here. I'm afraid that that's all I have time today, brothers and sisters. But before I leave you and before we part, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can see the link to my Spotify channel as well as my Points of Light Radio store, where you can go and buy some of this merchandise here and represent what I'm sure is rapidly becoming some people's favorite podcast. I'm glad to hear that. And as well as some other fraternal merchandise. And I also want to point out that Points of Light Radio is available to advertise your fraternal store or event. Just get in touch with me via my Facebook page. But brothers and sisters, I'm sorry to part with you. And it's always a pleasure fellowshipping with you. Until we meet again, brothers and sisters, just step into the light.